Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Alton Sterling, Breonna Taylor, and most recently, George Floyd. Just a handful of unarmed Black men and women killed by police officers in recent years. Now, the world is talking. Protests, some turning violent, Confederate statues removed. The quest for racial equality continues. Northern Nevada, it's time to have a talk. A serious one, a life-saving one, a life-changing one, a conversation about race. Thank you for being here for our 1-hour special edition of this town hall. I'm Tabney Dozier, and I would like to get right to it and introduce my panel. We're going to start right here. Kyra Thomas is an organizer with Black Lives Matter. We have Washoe County Sheriff Darren Balaam. We have Tiffany Young. She's the director of the Washoe County School District Equity and Diversity Department. Deputy Chief Mac Vincent with Reno Police, and Eric Brown, Washoe County Manager. Thank you all for being here this afternoon after a wild and stressful week. So our area got a taste of America's discriminatory past that is still very present. The desire to make it known that Black lives matter. There's a back and forth about why all lives should matter, but this message last Saturday was clear that Black people are killed more frequently by those in power than other races, and the time for silence and inaction has passed. But later in the evening, the destructive and dangerous actions after the peaceful protest hurt buildings, property, and our feelings. Kyra, I think it's very important to start with you so you can set the scene, because this was a Black Lives Matter protest. Give us the background and then talk about when it started to turn bad.
Oh, thank you, Tabney. Our protest was moving and beautiful to begin with, to see how our community came together for Black lives and the movement itself. The protest didn't turn bad until we dismissed the crowd to go home peacefully, as we said many times within the protest, that we wanted everyone to stay peaceful and to go home peacefully. Some protesters within the crowd took a turn for themselves to go and do what they did to our city on their own terms. So amongst some of those people, there were people who were trying to continue to keep the peace, but they weren't successful when it was more of like 5 out of 200 people that were causing chaos within our city trying to keep the peace, which is that's just an estimate number, but we should all get the point. And just like they say, one bad apple can ruin the crop, so I feel that that was one of the main reasons our peaceful protests ended and took a drastic turn.
And it had to be hurtful to see. Were you home? Were you watching?
Yeah, I was home. I was about an hour. I just got home like an hour later, and I was home, and I seen everything happen, and it really did anger me, and it made me saddened to see that people felt that that was the need, that's what we were trying to bring to the table when it really wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mac and then the sheriff, talk about the response, the atmosphere, when you were called in or when you realized, okay, RPD needs to respond.
So we actually had a great relationship with the march. They notified us that they wanted to march. They notified us when they were going to do it, where they were going to do it. And so we had officers out there to protect them, to allow them to present their message and protect those constitutional rights they have to protest. And it was peaceful in the beginning. We noticed it when the protest was done, and those folks that went home, like she said, and then there was this small sliver of the group that stayed around. They made their way down toward the Reno Police Station. That's when we knew that we had a group that was less than peaceful. They did damage to the police station, and that's when we knew we needed to call for some help. We called in some assistance from folks that were off duty, from the sheriff's office, from Sparks Police Department, to try to give us a hand.
Mm-hmm. So you were as an assisting agency?
Absolutely, and just like Max said, we were monitoring it. It was going absolutely fine and peaceful, and like Kyra said, and we were told, and they clearly from the officers and everything we got, when the protest was over, you could clearly see those peaceful protesters leave, and that small group that I think ruined it for everybody continued on. And when we started hearing about the Reno Police Department, that's when we knew. We started calling our resources in and finding out what we had. And then when Reno reached out, we knew exactly what we could offer, and then we sent them over to help, as they had by then made it to the City Hall.
Okay. And so Tiffany and Eric, you're watching this, you're at home. I definitely want your thoughts. Tiffany, to start with you.
I will say that for a couple of aspects, I'm a community member. I'm a black mother, a mother of a black daughter and a black son, and a grandmother of a young black man. And my daughter was at the peaceful protest. And so just seeing her out there when she came home, it was devastating to see what was happening in the community. On the other side of what I want to say is that I err on the side of language. And so I was deeply disturbed about how it was being portrayed. I did not have the opportunity to personally meet Akira, but I am so impressed with what she and the young people did. And then when the messages became mixed, that angered me because the method and the process that they went through and they took the necessary steps to have voice was kind of taken away by the way it was being messaged across the community.
Yeah, and I would, actually, I went down to see the march form up. I'm new to the area, so this is the first time I have had an opportunity to go see an organizing event like this, and it was a beautiful day, as has been said. Started out beautifully, people of all colors I saw collecting downtown. I saw good law-abiding citizens that were coming out to genuinely express themselves in terms of what happened in Minneapolis and in terms of the broader issue. But I did notice as the afternoon went on that you started seeing other folks show up that didn't appear to be from here. I don't know that, didn't interview them, but they're wearing paramilitary gear. They had bags, just a very ominous presence. And by the time I got home, again, it was a very different scene than what I experienced that afternoon. I do want to congratulate and thank KOLO 8 for covering it. You were the first there. I think it's very important to point that out because for a lot of folks in the community, if you had not been there, we would not have seen what actually took place. And as you're looking at these kinds of occurrences, as we're seeing all over the country, the ability of the camera to capture what's actually going on is extremely helpful. So I want to thank you guys for that.
Well, and I want to thank you. You know, that's very good to hear. We are a part of this community too. You know, I'm a journalist, but I'm also a Reno resident, right? So that's why, you know, my team, my management were able to pull this together. So I do appreciate you saying that. Anyone can answer this. What are you hoping to accomplish? We have a live audience. We have a raw conversation. What are you hoping happens today?
Can I go first? I would say that I appreciate conversation and that we have a live audience and we can engage in dialogue all day long. And I think every person has a role. But what I'd like to see happen is some systematic changes. So I'm hoping that it's not just a conversation because I'm tired of talking.
Tired of talking.
So.
Yes. Yes. Who else?
I'd say the same thing besides just talking. It's time to start identifying what the next steps are. Throughout my career, I'll echo what Tiffany said. We've heard this throughout my law enforcement career about talking and changing, but now hopefully after this conversation, we can start identifying some actions and take those steps.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you want to try?
I just want to say somewhat of the same thing, right? We have now an audience that's willing to come to the table and talk, and that's what we need to do. Mm-hmm. We need to come to the table and talk so that we can make those changes. And we talk about police reform. Well, it's a pretty generic term, right? So we want to identify what reform means. We heard the public talk to us about what they wanted to see in a use of force policy. Today, rolled out a new use of force policy for the city of Reno and the Reno Police Department. Those are the kind of changes we need to make. Okay. It's not just talking.
Starting to peel back the layers, if you will, and getting into action. Well, we have this platform and we have an hour, so we're going to go ahead and head to our first commercial break. But as we send you to break, taking action really is how change happens. On your screen right now, if you'd like to connect with the Reno Sparks NAACP, just call the number on your screen or visit the agency's website, renosparksnaacp.org. The issue of police brutality when we come back. Black men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men. For Black women, that number is 1.4 times more likely than white women. It adds that 1 in 1,000 Black boys and men will be killed by police in their lifetime, compared to 39 out of 100,000 white men. Last Monday, George Floyd was arrested by police after they received a call from a convenience store clerk accusing him of trying to pay with a counterfeit $20 bill. He was later subdued on the concrete for nearly 9 minutes. Former officer Derek Chauvin placing his knee on Floyd's neck. An independent autopsy ordered by Floyd's family says he passed from asphyxia due to neck and back compression that led to a lack of blood flow to the brain. Now let's backtrack to 2014. Eric Garner on Staten Island, New York. Officers showing up after receiving reports of Garner selling loose, untaxed cigarettes. While arresting him, former officer Daniel Pantaleo put him in a chokehold. Garner, who had asthma, died of a heart attack on his way to the hospital. Pantaleo did not face state or federal charges, but was fired from the NYPD last year after a department trial. Both men can be heard in the videos being recorded by bystanders saying, "I can't breathe." Deputy Chief Vincent, first question to you. Talk to me about your views on police actions in those videos that we referenced and the stats I read about Black deaths caused by police.
Hard to argue with data. I mean, it's shocking. As a police officer for more than 20 years, it shocks me. It angers me. And the videos absolutely disgust me. George Floyd on the ground for 8 minutes is absolutely atrocious. And what bothers me even more than that, to be honest with you, is the officer standing at the front of that vehicle and doing nothing. Nobody, whether that officer was caught up in the moment, somebody needs to break that emotional triangle that has happened. Somebody needs to intervene. Somebody needs to do something. One of those other 3 officers. And that's the part that really baffles me, and I can't understand why somebody could stand and watch that for 8 minutes.
And Sheriff, you spoke about George Floyd's death and the conversation with your child about excessive force and speak on the excessive force in the study I referenced and your conversations at home.
So the excessive force stats, they're disheartening. They are absolutely, they anger us. Just like the community, I love my profession, and when we see officers use that excessive force and when we roll into my 12-year-old child, I think when we see this video, when they can recognize and ask, "Dad, what is that officer doing? Why are they doing that?" And they know that it's wrong, that absolutely angers me, and that's why, kind of what Max said before, not just that officer, but all 3 of them. You had the one standing there, but you had the 2 behind him. And so for all 3 that just did nothing but sit there and allow the officer to have his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck is beyond repulsive and disgusting. For us, we have in our policies a part for intervention. And in fact, in our use of forces this year in training on our weaponless defense, we actually have a scenario that was built in January where we have a deputy use excessive force to see what our other deputies will do. Because that is key. It's just not the one using the force. If you have other ones around and they stand there and they don't step in and tap out, that tarnishes our badge. That ruins the trust, which is so precious in our community.
And I think that's where, you get some of this anger, not only at former Officer Chauvin, but the others that stood there, that it's this, badge first over instead of community first, which is disheartening. And, those stats reference racial profiling. We had the woman in the park in New York that called 911 for a Black man just bird watching. Tiffany, you mentioned you have a Black daughter, you have a Black son. Having to talk about these videos again, how are police viewed through the eyes of minorities?
I want to be careful and not to say that I'm speaking on behalf of everybody. So I'm going to tell you about me as a Black woman parenting a Black son. And it's exhausting, it's terrifying, and it's so frustrating because I work closely with law enforcement and community and education, all these agencies, and I've raised my son to be the young Black man that he is today, and knowing and fearing that just because I've done all that it's not enough angers me. It also angers me that I am not representative of an entire community. I know that law enforcement, not all law enforcement are bad. I am not anti-police, but I also know what accountability is. So if one black person does something and people get upset and become fearful, that's on them. Because we cannot lay these kind of core implicit biases and assumed fears on entire populations of people. But as a black woman, as a black mother, I'm tired. I'm real tired.
Yeah. And Eric, you come from a diverse North San Diego County, right? Before coming to here, you work closely with law enforcement. How do you feel?
Well, I did move here from North San Diego County, but maybe more pertinent to this conversation, I grew up in the South. I grew up in southeastern Virginia. My parents grew up in very rural, very poor North Carolina. And as a young man, young African-American man, we grew up seeing and experiencing things that taught us not to trust law enforcement. I have actually had members of my family that have been killed by law enforcement in the South. I had to watch my father and my older brother in many instances be disrespected for no reason at all other than they were just driving but while being black kind of thing. And as a result of that, we were raised to understand that there was a different standard for us. I have had the same conversation that my father had with me as a young man with my two sons, who are now in Southern California. Well, one's in Southern California, one's moved here. And it's a shame, but it's a reality that they have to understand the realities of the criminal justice system that exists in America today. They both have moved to multiple cities as a result of my jobs over the years. So it's a reality. I will say also that as a result of my own personal experience, I am frankly not surprised. I think what has changed is the ability to capture these things on camera or in recordings has changed. But if you're from where I'm from, the kinds of life experiences that we've seen over our lifetimes, we've always known this kind of thing has existed. Now, I guess fortuitously, it's being captured.
Well, and that's how I started the show. America's racist past is present and is into the present. And, you know, we as a society are tasked, but it's clear law enforcement has to be tasked with changing this because you're from Virginia, I'm from Kentucky, you know? So Deep South, I very much get it, I understand it, and I get it, you know? Sheriff, Matt?
Go ahead. You started.
Tiffany, you said something that, and you too, Eric, that said something that shocked me about 10 years ago, and Tiffany was actually there. We were at the Reno Police Station. We were having a discussion. It was you and me, Officer Bowden, Officer Geider, and they mentioned the talk. Now, I'm a kid who grew up in the Bay Area. I'm a kid who went to high school here in Reno. I never heard of the talk 10 years ago. And I acknowledge I cannot walk a mile in anybody else's shoes, right? I'd never heard of the talk, and I was absolutely floored by the talk. And I don't know if a lot of people know what the talk is. And you mentioned it, you alluded to it.
Oh, we're going to dive into it, too.
Okay, good.
And can I jump into that? I was in that conversation, and I would tell you that a majority of our black community clearly knows what the talk is. And what the challenge we face right now is people acknowledging the fact that they have the privilege and the entitlement to not even know what the talk is. So I appreciate that you leaned into that conversation because I saw how uncomfortable it was at that time, but you listened. And so that's what we have to understand, that yes, we can talk and yes, we can listen, but we also have to see that there's an impact and change.
Yeah, and you know, we need white people to help make this change. So to not just say, oh, well, it doesn't affect me. Well, my kids don't have to have a talk, so it's not a big deal. It's not going to get us anywhere. Here we are today in 2020 still asking for basic rights as human beings. So the talk with kids, the talk with each other, it has to happen. But We got more to go to, so hang with us. We want to put some more information on your screen, not just to listen, but to get involved. The Northern Nevada Black Cultural Awareness Society, founded in Reno in July 1988, promoting ethnic and cultural inclusiveness. Call the number you see or visit www.nepkis.org. Stay with us. Five seconds. Despite Nevada having reformed marijuana policy over the last decade, far too much has remained unchanged when it comes to racial disparities in arrests. The ACLU of Nevada releasing a report back in April that states Black people are three times more likely to get arrested for marijuana in Nevada than white people, even though Black and white people are about equally likely to use marijuana. Nationwide, Blacks are 3.64 times more likely than white people to be arrested for marijuana possessions. Arrest rates have decreased in states that have legalized marijuana, but racial disparities still remain. How do we stop police bias, minorities being profiled and targeted? Who wants it first?
I think the first thing we do is we have to implement that in our training and test for the police side of how our deputies, officers, when they go out, how they're interacting, what is their decision-making when they're interacting, and when we do that, we have to have those instructors or trainers that are willing to step forward, and not just because we work day in, day out with them and say, oh, that was okay, and ignore that. They have to make that tough call and say, hold on, time out. The reason you just stopped that person was because you racially profiled them. You have to have that courage and wherewithal to stand tall when you're training us, and that's where we lean upon our community to bring them in and say, help us assess, help us build those lesson plans, and that's the first step.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to respond?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a matter of training and accountability, and I think what's going on right now in this country and in this region should force us to look in the mirror as a region and examine what, if any, additional steps we need to take to make sure that we get better in this area, because everybody can be better. Lord knows there's COVID-19 going on, there's economic strife going on as a result of that, but that still shouldn't get in the way of us taking a hard look at making sure from a law enforcement and a criminal justice standpoint we're treating people fairly, and that they're not being discriminated against based on the color of their skin.
And Akira, I learned you are a native here of Reno.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people that look like you. There's not a lot of police that look like you. There's not a lot in county government and law, as lawmakers that look like you.
Right.
Just talk to me about growing up here.
Honestly, growing up here, it was definitely different because most of the time I was the only black kid in all of my classes. And when it came to history, when they talked about slavery, they feel like that's all the history that we actually had. And actually being able to grow up in a black family and actually have both of my parents there, they enlightened me on my real history, on who we really are, and not just what we were taught in class. And just being that only kid in the class that was looked upon like, oh, your family went through slavery and this and that. So basically, like, they try to have pity on me just because of the color of my skin, not knowing that it was my ancestors who went through it and we still go through it. But it was always uncomfortable being a child, having to go through that, especially being in a more predominantly white and Hispanic area.
Right, and I want to put some statistics on the screen. We have the makeup of from the U.S. Census Bureau on the makeup of Washoe County, which is about 62.6% white, 24.8% Hispanic, 2.7% Black. And then you go to the sheriff's office, and your office sheriff is 83% white, 9.7% Hispanic, 2% Black. What strikes you from this information when you look at Washoe County makes up, when you, of course, know your department? Do you want more diversity on your staff?
Absolutely. So the first thing that strikes me is we need to do better. But if you just look, and I learned right from Tiffany 3 years ago, you just can't check the box. So I just can't say, well, when I get 2.7% African American, check, I'm done. That's not diversity. That's not true diversity. So short and simple, we need to do better. Short and simple is throughout our entire ranks through the entire office, we have to reflect the community. But more importantly, for me, it's not only being diverse in the office, but it's having those relationships in the community and building that trust so that they know what we do and they want to come join our office, and they have the trust that we are always going to do the right thing for this community because it's our community.
Yeah. Is diversity training, is that discussed in Reno Police? Is it discussed about, when you go to maybe make an arrest or when you're interacting with the community to, represent it and reflect it?
So diversity training exists at the Reno Police Department. Previous to now, we had brought folks in from outside to do diversity training. And right before the COVID thing hit, we were set up to have diversity training with Tiffany. Tiffany was going to come in, and for those of you who don't know Tiffany, she can have that hard conversation with you. She's willing to have that hard conversation with you, and that's what we wanted. It got suspended or at least delayed until we could put 50 people in a classroom and actually do this, or 20 people in a classroom and do this. And in some respects, the timing will be much better, in my opinion, for this discussion.
Okay.
I think. I hope. That's my hope. We've been now in a place where we're set for that, that training.
I'm going to let you respond. Got to head us to break, so we have more time. You will have the first question or the first chance to respond as soon as we go to break. Let me put some more information on your screen. If you'd like to get involved with Akira and her team to end racial injustice, on your screen is her email address along with Victor Patterson. There are 2 Black Lives Matter groups here in the Reno area, but we definitely wanted to get Akira's information out there. More of this town hall when we return. Okay, Tiffany, let's get right back to the response to the need for diversity training with police.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to point out is we do a disservice when we toss around the word diversity. So I want to be clear that if we're going to talk about diversity, that we name it. So are we talking about racial diversity, gender diversity, diversity in varying levels of skills? So we want to be careful with that because sometimes in our work we'll say we want to, have diversity training, but what does that actually mean? And does that mean we're going to talk about implicit bias and racism and just some systems of power and privilege? The other point to training is that, yes, I agree that it's necessary, and there's some work in this cultural competency that needs to take place, but we also need to be mindful that there's training, there's accountability, but then there's implementation. And there's an expectation that it should be ongoing. So to Sheriff Balin's point that we discussed that it's not a checkbox, you cannot expect people to sit in a room for a few hours and get it. So we have to own that we're committed to it, and I don't need it just to be in your value statement. I need it to be in your actions.
Yeah,
Right?
and that's what I love about live TV. We're going to talk about it. We're holding you accountable. That's my job as a journalist, to not just facilitate the conversation, but okay, our audience has heard you, whether they're streaming or watching live on TV, and we're going to check in with you. We're going to check in with the county. We're going to check in with RPD. We're going to check in with the school district. We're going to check in with the sheriff's office. We're going to make sure Black Lives Matter continues to let us know about other positive events to end racial injustice, because we've been talking.
Yeah, and there is the commitment to the training.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that that's clear. There is a commitment.
Just because
to
of
the training.
COVID kind of messed it
Yes.
up right now. Okay, so as heavy as our shoulders feel right now, we have young children trying to process why I can't play with my friends and why I can't go to school and why I can't have graduation. What in the world is COVID-19, and why are people screaming Black Lives Matter? So I know a lot of you majority are parents on here. What kind of conversations are you having with your kids? Tiffany, you mentioned the talk and kind of alluded to that, so I think we should explain to our viewers about the talk that happens in Black families.
Yeah, and so, and not all Black families, but majority, we need to have this conversation that no matter how hard you work, right, there's this myth of meritocracy. No matter how good you do, no matter how good you are, simply the color of your skin can cause your life to be lost. And that's a reality. And what people struggle with is they look at that as we're pointing a finger at somebody. We're talking about the existence of what is. Right? So I am not talking about how good or bad anyone is. It's the reality that no matter how clean you can be, there is a potential for a loss of life. And to understand that I can raise the best child, and I have to tell that Black kid that they have to be 100, 200, 300% better in a class, better in a community, better on the street. Think about the generational and community and societal trauma and the weight that a people have to carry.
And they're still carrying.
Yes.
I'm a law-abiding news anchor, held to a higher standard, I still tighten in my chest when a police car gets behind me and I'm not breaking the law. And that is from where I grew up. That is from the talk from my parents who had with me that white children may not have. You know to respect the police when you meet them, but we're told, oh, take your hat off, oh, make sure your hands are at 10 to 2, oh, don't touch anything, don't talk back. It's just that don't. Why? And that is the heaviness. What are you saying? Well, you did talk to your children, you told.
I still talk
You
to my
still
children.
talk to your children.
And they're grown. And I will tell you that every place we've ever lived, I make sure that I talk them through all the things you said about don't. I make sure they understand that that may not save them, because we've certainly seen situations where compliance didn't help. And that I am their first call along with the family attorney if something goes down. And I dare say that that talk doesn't have to occur in a lot of other families, non-Black families or non-people of color. Thankfully, they've never had to call me, knock on wood, to do it. But it's the same talk that I received from my father, my brother and I received from my father, and I suspect my kids, when they have kids, if they have kids, will have to have the same thing. It's just the reality of the world we live in.
Did you have it growing up?
Yeah, I feel like being a child like of a black mother and a black father, that having this conversation as a younger, when I was growing up, and I'm not even, over the age of 20, I'm only 18, and having this conversation when I was growing up, it was more of, don't, and that's what we've seen. But now as the younger generations are getting older, they see more on social media, they see more through all these different platforms, so then they're actually seeing what's happening to their own people, so that scares them. And like she was saying, Tiffany was saying, she was saying that it's traumatizing, and I feel like a lot of kids nowadays, they are being forced to grow up faster just because of what they're seeing. And especially as a black child, you have to be on your toes and you have to be cautious of what you're doing no matter what. Even being only 5 years old, you can be on the street playing with the water gun and,
Tamir Rice,
Man.
prime example. Ahmaud
Exactly.
Arbery was jogging in his neighborhood. Trayvon Martin, not killed by police, but
was walking down the street with the Arizona and
Skittles.
and still got racially profiled and killed. So it's just like, I feel like that conversation has been brought up more, but then at the same time, these children are having these conversations by themselves. So it's not even more of our parents anymore, it's more of social media that's telling us this, and that brings fear to their heart too, because who are you supposed to call when you need help? And we're supposed to be able to call on the police force when we need help, but now kids are seeing what they see on social media and it scares them and it's traumatizing, so.
Respond to that.
Saddening, because I would agree. I didn't have that conversation with my kids. I didn't have to. And so for me, it's upsetting as law enforcement, because we should only have a conversation, everybody, that says when the police stop you, pull you over, just cooperate. You shouldn't have to talk like Tiffany, Eric, and Kyra. I'm not going to mess that up. How their parents and how they're talking to their kids. We should not have that, and that should be the goal of law enforcement and our community working together so that our kids, like Mr. Brown said, do not have to have them down future generations. And that's what I tell my kids.
Right.
And I learned from Dr. Dupree, because he asked me the question last year, what do you see? And I said, well, I don't see color. And he says, no, I want you to see my color. And so those are the conversations I have with my kids is, see their color and learn about their culture, learn about their heritage and appreciate it, and understand where you may have the privilege and they don't, and work with them so that future generations, we don't have to have this conversation anymore, and we can be proud of that.
We're going to keep this going. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Hung on to that point about not seeing. Some people say, and I've heard it in my workplace, I don't see color. That's not the response that we want to hear. We want to be seen. When you take off, the county manager hat and the Washoe County hat and the news hat, you're a black woman, you're a black man, I'm a black woman. So when you hear people say, I don't see color, what is your response to that?
Well, it sends me over the edge. I'll be perfectly honest with you, because it's not real. What I say to people is, if you can find a crayon in a box of crayons, a color, you can see color. The issue is not that you see that I'm black. The issue is how you respond to me because I'm black. So we have to be better. We have to be even better about our language. So when we start using the those and the thems in communities, you see color because you've separated people even in the way you talk. So when we start to say, I'm colorblind and I don't see color, you have erased a piece of my identity. I show up black 365 days of the year, and I'm intentional and unapologetic about it. So if you tell me you don't see me, that's not about me. That's about you.
Okay, this was a good conversation to have that I think we need to continue even beyond today, which we all recognize. We've gone over on time, which is okay. This is what it's for. This is why we blocked out an hour. From the control room, how much time do we have left? Should we send to break? Okay, we'll go ahead and do that and get ourselves caught back up, and we will reconvene when we come back. So we have a viewer question on the screen, and we're going to read that right now. Is this one from Nicole? This is live TV, so I appreciate y'all being patient with me. I need in my ear who this is. Okay, Nicole L. is asking, how are crowd control measures such as pepper spray, rubber bullets regulated? Sheriff, how does that happen? How does that happen?
So we have a policy, a use of force policy, that clearly delineates when we can use those, when they're supposed to be dispersed, and then the manufacturers also have recommendations as well that they place on them when you purchase those, and then we roll them into our use of force policy.
Okay. Do you have those on staff?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot like the sheriff said, you know, there are manufacturer policies that we roll into the same policies we have in how they're used
Okay.
and when they should be used.
Quick 20 seconds. Some would ask, why not use rubber bullets and pepper spray and other non-lethal tactics when you encounter the public beyond protests? What would be your response?
So I guess the question is, use them when we're not
Could we
protesting?
have them more often for law enforcement so we don't have deadly shootings of unarmed people?
So we do have them all the time, and they are deployed when we can safely deploy them. Sometimes, unfortunately, if they encounter a situation that's rapidly evolving and quick, they can't access those weapons.
Okay. We'll send it to break. We'll keep this convo going. Fifteen seconds out. So it's a minute. Seconds each for your response.
Can we?
Okay, well, welcome back. Thanks for being with us. We've had a great conversation. We've talked, we're talking. Now it's time for action. What, for each of you, what are you going to take from this conversation? What are you going to do to stop racial inequality, to increase the love in this community?
I think in my case, in capacity as the county manager, I'll be working with our Board of County Commissioners and other contacts within the county to take a hard look at what we can do to make the community better. That may mean thinking about things like Human Rights Council or Civil Rights Council. That may mean probably increasing our resources for mental health assistance for our citizens. That is a big part of what I hear out of a lot of the law enforcement folks in terms of what we're dealing with. So it's those kinds of things that we're going to take a hard look at. As the county manager, I'm reminded by my commissioners that I don't make policy. They do, but I can certainly help inform them what the issues are so that we're making the right moves.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have two roles. As a deputy chief at the police department, I think we have a role to really look at the way we do business and listen to what the community says. But I take this suit off, and I'm a community member too. And I think as a community member, I have a role too. And that is to help people understand why we're where we are today. And I think that's my job, that's my role.
Yeah, for me, it will be to continue to educate. That's my goal. I believe that I'm founded in building capacity. I'm a member of this community too, and so one of the things that I will be more intentional about is bringing more people into this space and giving people more, I would say, grace in engaging in processes, but definitely pushing for change.
So I think continuing to educate and train within, but some actions that we will quickly be doing in the next couple of months is we'll be posting all of our use of force online on our webpage. It'll give a breakdown by race, both for the deputies as well as those that we use force on and the type of force, for that transparency, as well as we'll be putting all our policies which were out online. We had to pull them because we had some errors we needed to correct. So those will be going out. So again, the community can see exactly what we're doing and engaging the community more and bringing them into the office and opening up the office more.
On my part, I definitely will be working with the community to empower and educate our youth and bringing awareness to what we are going through as a people and as a community in a whole, and to make sure that we continue to educate each other to know when we are being threatened or when our lives are being put on the stand for the rest of the people. And so I just want to make sure that I continue to use my voice to actually bring peace to the matter and to actually bring accountability to what we want change for.
And while it's important to have diverse, minorities in these conversations, I mean, white people have to help. White people are not immune. When we talk about I don't see color or it doesn't involve me, racism is everyone's problem. Is that a fair statement?
It is, and what I would say is, let's be cautionary of minority moments. So don't bring minorities to the table just to be at the table for that moment. Be threaded throughout the process.
Okay, we'll be right back. That's one that I had down that kind of just didn't have time. So I'd like to ask that when we come back and to have that discussion, and then it just depends on how much time to send us out, because this is the final break before we start the 5 o'clock show. And I will have a one shot to end this. Is that right, Mark, still on this camera? I can't hear. Thank you. 15 seconds out. Final one.
Too late now. It's out there.
Okay, we are back. How does the community police the police? We've talked a lot about what you two do in your departments to make sure that, we get more diverse staff members, the training, you're going to have the accountability and the transparency, but there still can be wrongdoing within your departments. What does the community do?
I think the community demands that transparency. That's what we owe to the community. We are the community's police, right? Without the community, there is no police. And so they have to demand that transparency. They have to become involved in the way that we police and demand that we police in a way that meets the expectation of the community.
I think not only being involved and demand that, but I know at least, and I don't want to speak for Max, he can confirm, but I know the chief has had a chief's board. I have a community engagement, and those committees that I've established, at least in the sheriff's office, I know I'll let Max say, is get involved in those because we want that committee. I use them for reviewing policy. I use them for suggesting new training, and that's how they can see. And again, if there's a problem in the community, if they don't have that trust and we haven't earned it yet, now they have representatives they can go to. They can come right to the table, and they have access right into our house, and they can start asking and demanding those questions be answered.
And quickly, we're pretty much, it's safe to say America's at the tipping point. Why do you think now is the tipping point?
Well, I think it's in part it's the convergence of a lot of different events here recently. I mean, you've had COVID-19. People have been asked by their governments, both local and federal, to do some things that they don't want to do, like stay home and wear masks and close your businesses and social distancing. And I think it's the cumulative effect of a lot of these injustices that have occurred over the years, all wound into one. And I think we're seeing the impact of that right now.
Mm-hmm. Final remarks from you, Akira.
I just believe that we're at a tipping point because we're tired as a people. It's been 400 plus years that we've been oppressed by our oppressors, and we still have not received the justice and the rights that we rightfully deserve as humans and as people of our community and as citizens as the nation in the United States. So I just feel like we have really been put on the spot in the moment of everything that's going on, and we have to make sure that we actually make a change ourselves and not only just rely on the people who are the ones who bring justice to us. We need to make sure that we bring justice for ourselves by bringing ourselves adequately with what we come with to the table.
15 seconds, Tiffany.
I would say that we have been at a tipping point for some time. It's just public. And so get involved, get on committees, ask questions, push at the system. And for our organizations, for our agencies, law enforcement, start looking around the room. Maybe shift the people you're bringing to the table to talk to and look around the room and ask questions and ask yourself, are we having like-minded thoughts and views, right? So thank you.
This is the first time. This is the first step. Progress requires the majority to help uplift the minority. And when we accept others with freedom and love, that is when we can accept ourselves. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Your top news headlines at 5 o'clock in just a few minutes. Take care.